Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone to the live studios here at Sri Radha Lane, next to Sri Nilamadhava Mandir, ISKCON of Houston, Texas. Today we're going to continue our reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We've reached chapter 4, and there's pretty auspicious appearances going to happen pretty soon. But before we do, let's hear this wonderful, beautiful glorification of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which also reveals many truths from Sanatana Goswami, the senior disciple of Sanatana Goswami, the person that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spent more time directly teaching than anyone else on the planet. It goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of light to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidvandodita Ditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Mareka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nishtadaka Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhuta dayin atini chochata kara hanamunchagadachin mam premna ritkantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, as I said, we've reached the chapter entitled The Appearance of Sri Narada. Very auspicious appearance in the Bhagavatam. Sri Narada and Lord Brahma are the personalities who speak most the philosophy in the Bhagavatam. And I think of the two, Narada gets a higher billing, more verses, more lines. Okay, beginning with text 19. He saw. Who's he? Gotta remind us here. This is what Vyasadeva saw. Yes. Yes. He saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which the people's occupations could be purified. And to simplify the process, he divided the one Veda into 4 in order to expand them among men. Purport. Formerly, there was only the Veda of the name Yajur, and the 4 divisions of sacrifices were there specifically mentioned. But to make them more easily performable, the Veda was divided into 4 divisions of sacrifice, just to purify the occupational service of the 4 orders. Above the 4 Vedas, namely Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva, there are the Puranas and the Mahabharata, Samhitas, and so on, which are known as the 5th Veda. Sri Vyasadeva and his many disciples were all historical personalities, and they were very kind and sympathetic toward the fallen souls of this age of Kali. As such, the Puranas and the Mahabharata were made from related historical facts, which explained the teaching of the 4 Vedas. There is no point in doubting the authority of the Puranas and Mahabharata as parts and parcels of the Vedas. In the Chandogya Upanishad 7.1.4, the Puranas and Mahabharata, generally known as histories, are mentioned as the 5th Veda. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, that is the way of ascertaining the respective values of the revealed scriptures. Text 20. The 4 divisions of the original sources of knowledge, the Vedas, were made separately, but the historical facts and the authentic stories mentioned in the Puranas are called the 5th Veda. Text 21. After the Vedas were divided into 4 divisions, Paila Rishi became the professor of the Rig Veda, Jaimini, the professor of the Sama Veda, and Vaishampayana alone became glorified by the Yajur Veda. Purport: the different Vedas were entrusted to different learned scholars for development in different ways. Text 22. The Samanta Muni, Angira, who was very devotedly engaged, was entrusted with the Atharva Veda, and my father, Romaharshana, was entrusted with the Puranas and historical records. So this is Sutta Goswami speaking, explaining what happened to Vyasadeva. Purport: in the Shuddhi Mantras also, it is stated that Angira Muni, who strictly followed the rigid principles of the Atharva Vedas, was the leader of the followers of the Atharva Vedas. Text 23. All these learned scholars, in their turn, rendered their entrusted Vedas unto their many disciples, grand-disciples, and great-grand-disciples, and thus the respective branches of the followers of the Vedas came into being. Purport: the original source of knowledge is the Vedas. There are no branches of knowledge, either mundane or transcendental, which do not belong to the original text of the Vedas. They have simply been developed into different branches. They were originally rendered by great, respectable, and learned professors. In other words, the Vedic knowledge, divided into different branches, has been distributed all over the world by different disciplic successions. No one, therefore, can claim independent knowledge beyond the Vedas. Text 24. Thus the great sage Vyasadeva, who was very kind to the ignorant masses, edited the Vedas so that they might be assimilated by less intellectual men. Purport: the Veda is one, and the reasons for its divisions in many parts are explained herewith. The seed of all knowledge, or the Veda, is not a subject matter which can easily be understood by any ordinary man. There is a stricture that no one should try to learn the Vedas who is not a qualified Brahmana. This stricture has been wrongly interpreted in so many ways. A class of men who claim Brahminical qualification simply by their birthright in the family of a Brahmana claim that the study of the Vedas is a monopoly of the Brahmana caste only. Another section of the people take this as an injustice to members of other castes who do not happen to take birth in a Brahmana family. but both of them are misguided. The Vedas are subjects which had to be explained even to Brahmaji by the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the subject matter is understood by persons with exceptional qualities of goodness. Persons who are in the modes of passion and ignorance are unable to understand the subject matter of the Vedas. The ultimate goal of Vedic knowledge is Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. This personality is rarely understood by those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance. In the Satya Yuga, everyone was situated in the mode of goodness. Gradually, the mode of goodness declined during the Treta and Dwapara Yugas, and the general mass of people became corrupt. In the present age, the mode of goodness is almost nil, and so far, the general mass of people, the kind-hearted, powerful sage, and so for the general mass of people, the kind-hearted, powerful sage, Srila Vyasadeva, divided the Vedas in various ways so that they may be practically followed by the less intelligent persons in the modes of passion and ignorance. It is explained in the next shloka as follows. Text 25. Out of compassion, the great sage thought it wise that this would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Thus he compiled the great historical narration called the Mahabharata for the women laborers and friends of the twice-born. Purport. The friends of the twice-born families are those who are born in the families of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, or the spiritually cultured families, but who themselves are not equal to their forefathers. Such descendants are not recognized as such for want of purificatory achievements. The purificatory activities begin even before the birth of a child, and the seed-giving reformatory process is called Garbhadana Sanskara. One who has not undergone such Garbhadana Sanskara, or spiritual family planning, is not accepted as being of an actual twice-born family. The Garbhadana Sanskara is followed by other purificatory processes, out of which the sacred thread ceremony is one. This is performed at the time of spiritual initiation. After this particular sanskara, one is rightly called twice born. One birth is calculated during the seed-giving sanskara, and the second birth is calculated at the time of spiritual initiation. One who has been able to undergo such important sanskaras can be called a bona fide twice born. If the father and the mother do not undertake the process of spiritual family planning and simply beget children out of passion only, their children are called Dvijabandhus. These Dvijabandhus are certainly not as intelligent as the children of the regular twice-born families. The Dvijabandhus are classified with the Shudras and the woman class, who are by nature less intelligent. The Shudras and the woman class do not have to undergo any sanskara, save and except the ceremony of marriage. The less intelligent class of men, namely women, Shudras, and unqualified sons of the higher castes, are devoid of necessary qualifications to understand the purpose of the transcendental Vedas. For them, the Mahabharata was prepared. The purpose of the Mahabharata is to administer the purpose of the Vedas, and therefore within the Mahabharata is placed the Bhagavad Gita, the summary Veda. The less intelligent are more interested in stories than in philosophy, and therefore the philosophy of the Vedas is included within the Mahabharata in the form of the Bhagavad Gita spoken by Lord Sri Krishna. Vyasadeva and Lord Krishna are both on the transcendental plane, and therefore they collaborated in doing good to the fallen souls of this age. The Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all Vedic knowledge. It is the first book of spiritual values, as the Upanishads are. The Vedanta philosophy is the subject matter for study by the spiritual graduates. Only the postgraduate spiritual student can enter into the spiritual or devotional service of the Lord. It is a great science, and the great professor is the Lord himself in the form of Lord Sri Chaitanya, Mahaprabhu, and persons who are empowered by him can initiate others in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Text 26. O twice-born Brahmanas, still his mind was not satisfied, although he engaged himself in working for the total welfare of all people. Purport. Sri Vyasadeva was not satisfied with himself, although he had prepared literatures of Vedic value for the all-around welfare of the general mass of people. It was expected that he would be satisfied by all such activities, but ultimately he was not satisfied. Text 27. Thus the sage, being dissatisfied at heart, at once began to reflect, because he knew the essence of religion, and he said within himself, purport, the sage began to search out the cause of not being satisfied at heart. Perfection is never attained until one is satisfied at heart. This satisfaction of heart has to be searched out beyond matter. Text 28, 29. I have, under strict disciplinary vows, unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas, the spiritual masters, and the altar of sacrifice. I have also abided by the rulings and have shown the import of disciplic succession through the explanation of the Mahabharata, by which even women, Shudras, and others, friends of the twice-born, can see the path of religion. Purport. No one can understand the import of the Vedas without having undergone a strict disciplinary vow and disciplic succession. The Vedas, spiritual masters, and sacrificial fire must be worshipped by the desiring candidate. All these intricacies of Vedic knowledge are systematically presented in the Mahabharata for the understanding of the woman class, the laborer class, and the unqualified members of the Brahmana, Kshatriya, or Vaishya families. In this age, the Mahabharata is more essential than the original Vedas. And that means, ladies, that we are all in that category. We are all fallen in the age of Kali. Text 30. I am feeling incomplete, though I myself am fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas. Purport. Undoubtedly, Srila Vyasadeva was complete in all the details of Vedic achievements. Purification of the living being submerged in matter is made possible by the prescribed activities in the Vedas. But the ultimate achievement is different. Unless it is attained, the living being, even though fully equipped, cannot be situated in the transcendentally normal stage. Srila Vyasadeva appeared to have lost the clue and therefore felt dissatisfaction. Text 31. This may be because I did not specifically point out the devotional service of the Lord, which is dear both to perfect beings and to the infallible Lord. Purport. The cause of the dissatisfaction, which was being felt by Srila Vyasadeva, is expressed herein by his own words, in his own words. This was felt for the normal condition of a living being in the devotional service of the Lord. Unless one is fixed in the normal condition of service, neither the Lord nor the living being can become fully satisfied. This defect was felt by him when Narada Muni, his spiritual master, reached him. It is described as follows. Text 32. As mentioned before, Narada reached the cottage of Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa on the banks of the Saraswati, just as Vyasadeva was regretting his defects. Purport. The vacuum felt by Vyasadeva was not due to his lack of knowledge. Bhagavata Dharma is purely devotional service of the Lord, to which the monist has no access. The monist is not counted amongst the Paramahamsas, the most perfect of the renounced order of life. Srimad Bhagavatam is full of narrations of the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead. Although Vyasadeva was an empowered divinity, he still felt dissatisfaction, because in none of his works were the transcendental activities of the Lord properly explained. The inspiration was infused by Sri Krishna directly in the heart of Vyasadeva, and thus he felt the vacuum, as explained above. It is definitely expressed herewith that without the transcendental loving service of the Lord, everything is void. But in the transcendental service of the Lord, everything is tangible, without any separate attempt at fruitive work or empiric philosophical speculation. Text 33. At the auspicious arrival of Sri Narada, Sri Vyasadeva got up respectfully, and worshipped him, giving him veneration equal to that given to Brahmaji, the creator. Purport. Vidi means Brahma, the first created living being. He is the original student as well as professor of the Vedas. He learned it from Sri Krishna and taught Narada first. So Narada is the second Acharya in the line of spiritual disciplic succession. He is the representative of Brahma, and therefore he is respected exactly like Brahma, the father of all Vidis, regulations. Similarly, all other successive disciples in the chain are also equally respected as representatives of the original spiritual master. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, fourth chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Appearance of Sri Narada. Chapter 5. Narada's instructions on Srimad Bhagavatam for Vyasadeva. I mean, try to understand how fortunate we are. We're hearing the original instructions by Narada to Vyasadeva on Srimad Bhagavatam. This is very confidential, very intimate knowledge. Text 1. Sutta Goswami said, "Thus the sage amongst the gods, Narada, comfortably seated and apparently smiling, addressed the Rishi amongst the Brahmanas, Vedavyasa." Purport. Narada was smiling because he knew well the great sage Vedavyas and the cause of his disappointment. As he will explain gradually, Vyasadeva's disappointment was due to insufficiency in presenting the science of devotional service. Narada knew the defect, and it was confirmed by the position of Vyasa. Cheers. Text 2. Addressing Vyasadeva, the son of Parashara, Narada inquired, "Are you satisfied by identifying with the body or the mind as objects of self-realization?" Purport. This was a hint by Narada to Vyasadeva regarding the cause of his despondency. Vyasadeva, as the descendant of Parashara, a greatly powerful sage, had the privilege of having a great parentage which should not have given Vyasadeva cause for despondency. Being a great son of a great father, he should not have identified the self with the body or the mind. Ordinary men with a poor fund of knowledge can identify the body as self or the mind as self, but Vyasadeva should not have done so. One cannot be cheerful by nature unless one is factually seated in self-realization, which is transcendental to the material body and mind. Text 3. No doubt your inquiries were full And your study, no doubt your inquiries were full, and your studies also well fulfilled, since you have prepared a great and wonderful work, the Mahabharata, which is full of all kinds of Vedic sequences, elaborately explained. Purport. The despondency of Vyasadeva was certainly not due to his lack of sufficiency. The despondency of Vyasadeva was certainly not due to his lack of sufficient knowledge, because as a student he had fully inquired about the Vedic literatures, as a result of which the Mahabharata is compiled with full explanation of the Vedas. Text 4. You have fully delineated the subject of impersonal Brahman, as well as the knowledge derived therefrom. Why should you be despondent in spite of all this, thinking that you are undone, my dear Prabhu? Purport. The Vedanta Sutra, or Brahma Sutra, compiled by Sri Vyasadeva, is the full deliberation of the impersonal absolute feature, and it is accepted as the most exalted philosophical exposition in the world. It covers the subject of eternity, and the methods are scholarly, so there cannot be any doubt about the transcendental scholarship of Vyasadeva. So why should he lament? Text 5. Sri Vyasadeva said, all you have said about me is perfectly correct. Despite all this, I am not pacified. I therefore question you about the root cause of my dissatisfaction. For you are a man of unlimited knowledge, due to your being the offspring of one Brahma, who is self-born, without mundane father and mother. Purport. In the material world, everyone is engrossed with the idea of identifying the body or the mind with the self. As such, all knowledge disseminated in the material world is related either with the body or with the mind, and that is the root cause of all despondencies. This is not always detected, even though one may be the greatest erudite scholar in materialistic knowledge. It is good, therefore, to approach a personality like Narada to solve the root cause of all despondencies. Why Narada should be approached is explained below. Text 6. My Lord, everything that is mysterious is known to you, because you worship the creator and destroyer of the material world and the maintainer of the spiritual world, the original personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to the three modes of material nature. Purport. A person who is 100% engaged in the service of the Lord is the emblem of all knowledge. Such a devotee of the Lord in full perfection of devotional service is also perfect by the qualification of the personality of Godhead. As such, the eightfold perfections of mystic power, Ashtasiddhi, constitute very little of his godly opulence. A devotee like Narada can act wonderfully by his spiritual perfection, which every individual is trying to attain. Srila Narada is a 100% perfect living being, although not equal to the personality of Godhead. Text 7. Like the sun, your goodness can travel everywhere in the three worlds. And like the air, you can penetrate the internal region of everyone. As such, you are as good as the all-pervasive Supersoul. Please, therefore, find out the deficiency in me, despite my being absorbed in transcendence under disciplinary regulations and vows. Purport. Transcendental realization, pious activities, worshipping the deities, charity, mercifulness, non-violence, and studying the scriptures under strict disciplinary regulations are always helpful. Text 8. Sri Narada said, You have not actually broadcast the sublime and spotless glories of the personality of Godhead. That philosophy which does not satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord is considered worthless. Purport. The eternal relation of an individual soul with the Supreme Soul, personality of Godhead, is constitutionally one of being the eternal servitor of the eternal Master. The Lord has expanded himself as living beings in order to accept loving service from them, and this alone can satisfy both the Lord and the living beings. Such a scholar as Vyasadeva has completed many expansions of the Vedic literatures, ending with the Vedanta philosophy, but none of them have been written directly glorifying the personality of Godhead. Dry philosophical speculations, even on the transcendental subject of the Absolute, have very little attraction without directly dealing with the glorification of the Lord. The personality of Godhead is the last word in transcendental realization. The Absolute, realized as impersonal Brahman or localized Supersoul, Paramatma, is less productive of transcendental bliss than the supreme personal realization of his glories. The compiler of the Vedanta Darshana is Vyasadeva himself. Yet he is troubled, although he is the author. So what sort of transcendental bliss can be derived by the readers and listeners of Vedanta, which is not explained directly by Vyasadeva, the author? Herein arises the necessity of explaining Vedanta Sutra in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam by the self-same author. Text 9. Although, great sage, you have very broadly described the four principles, beginning with religious performances, you have not described to such an extent the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. Purport. The prompt diagnosis of Sri Narada is at once declared. The root cause of the despondency of Vyasadeva was his deliberate avoidance of glorifying the Lord in his various editions of the Puranas. He has certainly, as a matter of course, given descriptions of the glories of the Lord Sri Krishna, but not as many as given to religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and salvation. These four items are by far inferior to the engagement in the devotional service of the Lord. Sri Vyasadeva, as the authorized scholar, knew very well this difference, and still, instead of giving more importance to the better type of engagement, namely devotional service to the Lord, he had more or less improperly used his valuable time, and thus he was despondent. From this it is clearly indicated that no one can be pleased substantially without being engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, this fact is clearly mentioned. After liberation, which is the last item in the line of performing religiosity and so on, one is engaged in pure devotional service. This is called the stage of self-realization, or the Brahma-bhuta stage. After attainment of this Brahma-bhuta stage, one is satisfied. But satisfaction is the beginning of transcendental bliss. One should progress by attaining neutrality and equality in the relative world. And passing this stage of equanimity, one is fixed in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. This is the instruction of the personality of Godhead in the Bhagavad Gita. The conclusion is that in order to maintain the status quo of the Brahma-bhuta stage, as also to increase the degree of transcendental realization, Narada recommended to the Vyasadeva that he, Vyasadeva, should now eagerly and repeatedly describe the path of devotional service. This would cure him from gross despondency. Text 10. Oh, very famous verse. Nayat bachas chitta padam harer yasho jagat pavitram pragrinit karachit tad vayasam tirtam ushanti manasa nayatra hangsa niraman yushik chayaha. Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. Since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pleasure there. Purport. Crows and swans are not birds of the same feather. I'll read that again. Crows and swans are not birds of the same feather because of their different mental attitudes. The fruitive workers or passionate men are compared to the crows, whereas the all-perfect saintly persons are compared to the swans. The crows take pleasure in a place where garbage is thrown out, just as the passionate fruitive workers take pleasure in wine and women and places for gross sense pleasure. The swans do not take pleasure in the places where crows are assembled for conferences and meetings. They are instead seen in the atmosphere of natural scenic beauty, where there are transparent reservoirs of water, nicely decorated with stems of lotus flowers and variegated colors of natural beauty. That is the difference between the two classes of birds. Nature has influenced different species of life with different mentalities, and it is not possible to bring them up into the same rank and file. Similarly, there are different kinds of literature for different types of men of different mentality. Mostly the market literatures, which attract men of the crows categories, are literatures containing refused remnants of sensuous topics. They are generally known as mundane talks in relation with the gross body and subtle mind. They are full of subject matter, described in decorative language, full of mundane similes and metaphorical arrangements, yet with all that, they do not glorify the Lord. Such poetry and prose on any subject matter is considered decoration of a dead body. Spiritually advanced men who are compared to the swans do not take pleasure in such dead literatures, which are sources of pleasure for men who are spiritually dead. These literatures, in the modes of passion and ignorance, are distributed under different labels, but they can hardly help the spiritual urge of the human being, and thus the swan-like spiritually advanced men have nothing to do with them. Such spiritually advanced men are also called manasa, because they always keep up the standard of transcendental voluntary service to the Lord on the spiritual plane. This completely forbids fruitive activities for gross bodily sense gratification or subtle speculation of the material egoistic mind. Social literary men, scientists, mundane poets, theoretical philosophers, and politicians who are completely absorbed in the material advancement of sense pleasure are all dolls of the material energy. They take pleasure in a place where rejected subject matters are thrown. According to Swami Sridhara, this is the pleasure of the prostitute hunters. But literatures which describe the glories of the Lord are enjoyed by the Paramahamsas, who have grasped the essence of human activities. That's a classic purport of Prabhupada. Text 11. Tadvad visargo janataga viplavo jasmin pratishlokam abhajyavatyapi naman anantasya yashon kitaniyat, shinvanti, gayanti, grinanti sadhavaha. On the other hand, that literature which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, form, pastimes, and so on, of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is a different creation, full of transcendental words directed toward bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. Purport. It is a qualification of great thinkers to pick up the best, even from the worst. It is said that the intelligent man should pick up nectar from a stalk of poison, should accept gold, even from a filthy place, should accept a good and qualified wife, even from an obscure family, and should accept a good lesson, even from a man or from a teacher who comes from the untouchables. These are some of the ethical instructions for everyone, in every place, without exception. But a saint is far above the level of an ordinary man. He is always absorbed in glorifying the Supreme Lord, because by broadcasting the holy name and fame of the Supreme Lord, the polluted atmosphere of the world will change. And as a result of propagating the transcendental literatures like Srimad Bhagavatam, people will become sane in their transactions. While preparing this commentation on this particular stanza of Srimad Bhagavatam, we have a crisis before us. Our neighboring friend, China, has attacked the border of India with a militaristic spirit. We have practically no business in the political field. Yet we see that previously there were both China and India, and they both lived peacefully for centuries without ill feelings. The reason is that they lived those days in an atmosphere of God consciousness. And every country over the surface of the world was God-fearing, pure-hearted, and simple, and there was no question of political diplomacy. There is no cause of quarrel between the two countries, China and India, over land which is not very suitable for habitation. There's a border dispute. It's been going on since time immemorial. It's on the top of the Himalayas. No one can live there. I mean, it's just ice and snow all year round. And certainly there is no cause for fighting on this issue. But due to the age of quarrel, Kali, which we have discussed, there is always a chance of quarrel on slight provocation. This is due not to the issue in question, but to the polluted atmosphere of this age. Systematically, there is propaganda by a section of people to stop the glorification of the name and fame of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, there's a great need for disseminating the message of Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world. It is the duty of every responsible Indian to broadcast the transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the world. To do all the supermost good, as well as to bring about the desired peace in the world. Because India has failed in her duty by neglecting this responsible work, there is so much quarrel and trouble all over the world. We are confident that if the transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam is received only by the leading men of the world, certainly there will be a change of heart, and naturally the people in general will follow them. Memo to Trump. The mass of people in general are tools in the hands of the modern politicians and leaders of the world, of the people. If there is a change of heart in the leaders only, memo to Trump, certainly there will be a radical change in the atmosphere of the world. We know that our honest attempt to present this great literature conveying transcendental messages for reviving the God conscious of the people in general and re-spiritualizing the world atmosphere is fraught with many difficulties. Our presenting this matter in adequate language, especially a foreign language, will certainly fail, and there will be so many literary discrepancies despite our honest attempt to present it in the proper way. But we are sure that with all our faults in this connection, again, I have put it too big. You've got to make it a little smaller. But we are sure that with all our faults in this connection, the seriousness of the subject matter will be taken into consideration, and the leaders of society will still accept this due to its being an honest attempt to glorify the Almighty God. When there is a fire in a house, the inmates of the house go out to get help from the neighbors who may be foreigners, and yet without knowing the language, the victims of the fire express themselves, and the neighbors understand the need, even though not expressed in the same language. The same spirit of cooperation is needed to broadcast this transcendental message of the Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the polluted atmosphere of the world. After all, it is a technical science of spiritual values, and thus we are concerned with the techniques and not with the language. If the techniques of this great literature are understood by the people of the world, there will be success. When there are too many materialistic activities by the people in general, when there are too many materialistic activities by the people in general all over the world, there is no wonder that a person or a nation attacks another person or nation on slight provocation. That is the rule of this age of Kali or quarrel. The atmosphere is already polluted with corruption of all description, and everyone knows it well. And who knows it well?
Everyone.
Just checking. I'll read that again. This is vintage Prabhupada. Nobody can write like this. The atmosphere is already polluted with corruption of all description, and everyone knows it well. There are so many unwanted literatures full of materialistic ideas of sense gratification. In many countries there are bodies appointed by the state to detect and censor obscene literature. This means that neither the government nor the responsible leaders of the public want such literature, yet it is in the marketplace because the people want it for sense gratification. The people in general want to read, that is a natural instinct, but because their minds are polluted, they want such literatures. Under the circumstances, transcendental literature like Srimad Bhagavatam will not only diminish the activities of the corrupt mind of the people in general, but also it will supply food for their hankering after reading some interesting literature. In the beginning, they may not like it. Because one suffering from jaundice is reluctant to take sugar candy. But we should know that sugar candy is the only remedy for jaundice. You know what jaundice is? When your eyes get yellow and your skin gets yellow, it's a liver disease. And when you get jaundice, when you put sugar on your tongue, it tastes so awful that it'll make you vomit. It's horrible. I had a really bad case of jaundice in India once. But you have to take, these medicine made with sugar, and it makes you just want to, you just keep taking it little, and then gradually the taste of the sugar comes back. Similarly, let there be systematic, let me see.
That's right.
In the beginning, No, I'm going to go back and read that part again. In the beginning, they may not like it because one suffering from jaundice is reluctant to take sugar candy, but we should know that sugar candy is the only remedy for jaundice. Similarly, let there be systematic propaganda for popularizing reading of the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, which will act like sugar candy for the jaundice-like condition of sense gratification. When men have a taste for this literature, the other literatures, which are catering poison to society, will then automatically cease. We are sure, therefore, that everyone in human society will welcome Srimad Bhagavatam, even though it is now presented with so many faults, for it is recommended by such an authority as Sri Narada, who was very kindly appeared in this chapter. So I'm laughing because when Prabhupada came over to America, he had it in his mind to get a printing press. It was the first thing he wanted. But what could he do? He had no money, he had no followers, he had no contacts, he had nothing. So anyway, eventually after, 4 years of intense endeavor, another heart attack, going back to India, getting his health back. All the disciples thought he was not coming back. It was heavy, intense theme. And then, but he got his health back in fairly short order because of the warmth in India and the Ayurvedic medicine and, the lifestyle, simple living. And then he came back, and within a very short time, he had a competition among the temples that had been started. And his idea was the first one who got enough money together to buy a press, an offset printing press, then he would go there and stay there for some time. So anyway, they all cooperated. And then what happened was none of them got it together, but when you put it all together, it was enough. So he said, all right, send me all the money. And then they purchased a press in Boston. So then he was in Los Angeles when this happened. So he went to the press, and he walked into the room. This press was 7 feet high and 10 feet long. It was an offset printing press, serious business. And he came in, and he looked at it, and he paid his full obeisances on a bare concrete floor with his arm outstretched, full obeisances to the printing press. And in the logo of the Gaudiya Math, which was the spiritual organization of his spiritual master, it's divided into kind of like a lotus flower in different sections, in different parts of the mission of the Gaudiya Math is there. And in one of them is a mridanga and a printing press. So although we do emphasize the Harinam and the chanting of Hare Krishna, Prabhupada emphasized even more the books. And he's revealing it right here in this purport, how important the Srimad Bhagavatam is and how important the distribution of the Srimad Bhagavatam is. And my best friend, Vaisheshika Prabhu, wrote a book called Our Family Business, and yours truly edited that book. It took me 2 years. And it explains all of this historically and practically and organizational-wise and everything, how we can do it. And I don't mind. I'm feeling this energy here in this room from the devotees who have come and started to hear Bhagavatam every day, or regularly at least. And I'm telling you, you should all get that book. And someday, maybe when I come back from India this next time, because I'm going to stay here for 3 or 4 years to do this, to do this audiobook, because it has to be consistent, the sound. So you have to do it with the same space, the same microphone, the same, setup, And during that time, I'm even thinking about reading that book out loud in front of everybody, with the, to get fired up about this. and then let those who are actually serious come forward and lead it. Hare Krishna. For the re-spiritualization of human society. Text 12. Knowledge of self-realization, even though free from all material affinity, does not look well if devoid of a conception of the infallible God. What then is the use of fruitive activities which are naturally painful from the very beginning and transient by nature if they are not utilized for the devotional service of the Lord? Purport. As referred to above, not only ordinary literatures devoid of the transcendental glorification of the Lord are condemned, but also Vedic literatures and speculation on the subject of impersonal Brahman when they are devoid of devotional service. When speculation on the impersonal Brahman is condemned on the above ground, then what to speak of ordinary fruitive work which is not meant to fulfill the aim of devotional service? Such speculative knowledge and fruitive work cannot lead one to the goal of perfection. Fruitive work, in which almost all people in general are engaged, is always painful, even in the beginning or at the end. It can be fruitful only when made subservient to the devotional service of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita also it is confirmed that the result of such fruitive work may be offered for the service of the Lord. Otherwise, it leads to material bondage. The bona fide enjoyer of the fruitive work is the personality of Godhead, and thus, when it is engaged for the sense gratification of the living beings, it becomes an acute source of trouble. So there you have it, the simple formula for what's causing the acute trouble in this world today. Text 13. O Vyasadeva, your vision is completely perfect, your good fame is spotless, you are firm in vow and situated in truthfulness, and thus you can think of the pastimes of your Lord in trance for the liberation of the people in general from all material bondage. Purport. People in general have a taste for literatures by instinct. They want to hear and read from the authorities something about the unknown, but their taste is exploited by unfortunate literatures which are full of subject matter for satisfaction of the material senses. Such literatures contain different kinds of mundane poems and philosophical speculations, more or less under the influence of Maya, ending in sense gratification. These literatures, although worthless in the true sense of the term, are variously decorated to attract the attention of the less intelligent men. Thus the attracted living entities are more and more entangled in material bondage without hope of liberation for thousands and thousands of generations. Sri Narada Rishi, being the best amongst the Vaishnavas, is compassionate towards such unfortunate victims of worthless literatures, and thus he advises Sri Vyasadeva to compose transcendental literature which is not only attractive, but can also actually bring liberation from all kinds of bondage. Srila Vyasadeva or his representatives are qualified because they are rightly trained to see things in true perspective. Srila Vyasadeva and his representatives are pure in thought due to their spiritual enlightenment, fixed in their vows due to their devotional service, and determined to deliver the fallen souls rotting in material activities. The fallen souls are very eager to receive novel informations every day, and the transcendentalists like Vyasadeva or Narada can supply such eager people in general with unlimited news from the spiritual world. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the material world is only a part of the whole creation, and this earth is only a fragment of the whole material world. There are thousands and thousands of literary men all over the world, and they have created many, many thousands of literary works for the information of the people in general for thousands and thousands of years. Unfortunately, none of them have brought peace and tranquility on the earth. This is due to a spiritual vacuum in those literatures. Therefore, the Vedic literatures, especially the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, are specifically recommended to suffering humanity to bring about the desired effect of liberation from the pangs of material civilization, which is eating the vital part of human energy. Hare Krishna. And the Bhagavad Gita is the spoken message of the Lord Himself recorded by Vyasadeva, and the Srimad Bhagavatam is the transcendental narration of the activities of the same Lord Krishna, which alone can satisfy the hankering desires of the living being for eternal peace and liberation from miseries. Srimad Bhagavatam, therefore, is meant for all the living beings all over the universe for total liberation from all kinds of material bondage. Such transcendental narrations of the pastimes of the Lord can be described only by liberated souls like Vyasadeva and his bona fide representatives who are completely merged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Only to such devotees do the pastimes of the Lord and their transcendental nature become automatically manifest by dint of devotional service. No one else can either know or describe the acts of the Lord, even if they speculate on the subject for many, many years. The descriptions of the Bhagavatam are so precise and accurate that whatever has been predicted in this great literature about 5,000 years ago is now exactly happening. Therefore, the vision of the author comprehends past, present, and future. Such liberated persons as Vyasadeva are perfect not only by the power of vision and wisdom, but also in oral reception, in thinking, feeling, and all other sense activities. A liberated person possesses perfect senses, and with perfect senses only can one serve the sense proprietor, Rishikesha, Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam, therefore, is the perfect description of the all-perfect personality of Godhead by the all-perfect personality, Srila Vyasadeva, the compiler of the Vedas. Hare Krishna. So we'll stop there. I'm sure there might have been some things that stood out in this reading tonight. Anything that stood out, anything that you want to discuss, any comments you have, or clarifications, or reflections? Yes, Hannah. Or reliable question. Faith. Reliability over time breeds faith. And it works two ways. You know, Krishna, he's been reliable over a long time, therefore we have faith in him, so now we have to be reliable over a long time so he can have faith in us. Hannah had kind of a realization.
The other day I read that Krishna's always anxious for
The-
us to come back,
The other day I read that Krishna's always anxious for us to come back,
or just accept his love. So
or just accept his love. So,
is it always there? It's just a matter of
is it always there? Is it just a matter of us just breaking down all of those? I want to call them barriers. Yes, it's very good, very well put, very well put. But the thing is, we can't do that ourselves. That's the catch. This is the problem. because the material energy is controlling us. We're under the laws of material nature. And as individual souls, we can't conquer the laws of nature. But the laws of nature are being controlled by Krishna. Maya Dakshina Prakriti, Suyate Sachirachadam. So figure it out. It's logical. Laws of nature are in control of us. We can't overcome them. Krishna's in control of the laws of nature. So if we go direct to Krishna and please him, Krishna will tell the laws of nature, okay, back off of this one, and then you can understand him, and then you can overcome even difficulties that you think are impossible to overcome in this life. Bad habits that we all have, second nature bad habits that we've all developed over lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes of being in this material world. They can easily be overcome like that by Krishna's little toe, just with a little toe, finished.
Is there a specific order in which these books should be read?
Certain specific order in which these books should be read. Well, it's clear from practically everything that Prabhupada says in the purports that the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam are most important. Because the Bhagavad Gita gives the ABCs, the basics. Actually everything's there in the Gita that's there in the Bhagavatam, but it's written in very, very concise sutric form. And you may remember in some of the purports we read today where Prabhupada is explaining how the Vedas are structured, the Vedic literatures are structured. And it talks about how Shudras and low-born persons, the women, but the women shouldn't feel offended by this because all persons, Kalo Shudra Sambhava, that means Kalo Shudra Sambhava means all of us are fallen in the age of Kali. Anyone who is not conceived and born by the proper sanskaras which are described in the Vedas, which we read about just briefly, are not qualified to hear the Vedas. The Vedas are the most esoteric literatures available, and they're written in deep Sanskrit, classic Sanskrit, that are not even meant for human beings to understand. It's in language that are meant for the demigods to understand. And we're supposed to learn how to chant them and do all the rituals so that the demigods, the higher beings, will understand and then reciprocate with us. So therefore, in the original Vedic culture, in order to read the Vedas, in order to even actually study them, one had to be highly elevated in Brahminical qualities. But now none of us in the Kali Yuga have those qualities. Therefore, therefore Krishna came again in the form of Lord Chaitanya in the mood of Srimati Radharani, who is feminine, which is compassion, nourishing. These are the feminine qualities. They're compassionate, they're nourishing, they're more tolerant in so many ways. So, although you hear a lot of things, a lot of statements in Bhagavatam about how, Shudras and Vaishyas and women are not as intelligent, and it's true, they're not as philosophically astute, but particularly to understand the highly esoteric sutras of the Vedas, of the original Vedas. They're not meant for human beings anyway, but beyond that, they're beyond the comprehension of the human beings in the Kali Yuga on the earth. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya came and he opened the gates, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which I'm recording now for posterity, for an audiobook, official audiobook from VBT. in the 9th chapter, the branches of the Chaitanya tree are explained. All the different personalities who came from the spiritual world with Lord Chaitanya to spread Krishna consciousness. And Lord Chaitanya, he spoke to them and he said, I order every living being in the world, in the universe, to take this Krishna consciousness and to spread it to others. So this is a very far out thing, because in effect what that did was he said, I order everyone to take to Krishna consciousness, means to chant Hare Krishna, and then to teach it to others, to spread it. So what that means is that in effect, he initiated everyone in the universe in the chanting of the holy name. And you remember it said in some of these verses, in some of the purports we just read, how there needs to be a purification of heart before one can get initiation. Initiation means Gayatri mantras, second initiation in our movement. That was what was considered Diksha. But we're so fallen that Lord Chaitanya empowered us to chant the Hare Krishna mantra, which is actually the goal in the beginning, as our purificatory preparation for taking Diksha and going back to the spiritual world. So therefore, Prabhupada gave these very simple vows for initiation. You follow the 4 regulated principles: no illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication, no meeting, fishing, eggs, anything that's of that nature, and then chanting 16 rounds a day. Those are the only instructions he gave everyone at the initiation. And there's lots of other things that come along with that. Once one does that, once one's heart is purified by the following of the 4 regular principles and the chanting, then one's spiritual awakening takes place. She liked something I said. She liked what I said about.
I like everything you said, but I liked what you just said.
I won't repeat that.
How we chant the mantra to give back to.
She liked that we chant the mantra to give back to.
That original place, but it's kind of like a purification, so that we can spread it. And I just read what I wrote, and it said, "One cannot be cheerful by."
Wait, now she's reading what she wrote as her notes. That one cannot be.
It was written.
Oh.
One cannot be cheerful.
One cannot be cheerful by nature.
Which is what chanting.
Which is chanting.
Back to.
Which is what chanting Hare Krishna gets it back to.
Our original nature.
Unless one is factually situated in self-realization, which is transcendental to the material body and mind. Correct. So all these things we hear about Shudra being Shudras or women or lower class or Vaishyas or whatever, we should know these are all things just to wake us up, to help us remember, hey, I'm not this body anyway, why am I sweating it? Lord Chaitanya came and he gave a process by which anyone can get the highest goal of life, and we're hung up on the fact that it says, I'm like a Shudra, so therefore I'm less intelligent, or I'm a woman, I'm less intelligent. We get hung up on that, and we don't remember that the end of that verse, that very verse in the Gita, says they can also come to the topmost realization, the goal of life, by taking up Krishna consciousness. So what Prabhupada would say, so what is the problem? Yeah, but it says here that we're less intelligent. That's right, you are. But what's the problem? You can still go back to Godhead by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya.
It's just a different nature.
It's a different nature?
Like men have a different nature than women. Like I wrote down.
She's waxing philosophical. Men and women have different natures, I'll tell you. Now that's profound. Because everybody in the world's trying to go to the opposite section and trying to make them all the same. Good luck.
Like it says that they are more interested in stories than philosophy.
More interested in stories than philosophy.
That doesn't have to be a bad thing.
No, it's a good thing. But it's everybody in Kali Yuga. That's the point that we're making.
Oh, I thought you meant like stories of Krishna rather than like...
No, in general, they're not philosophical. They just like to hear stories. Therefore, the book short stories are stacked with novels of various, like romantic and adventurous and terror and all these different things, because they like those things. But philosophy, not so much. As a matter of fact, in university education, in the beginning of university education, the PhD was a doctorate in philosophy. PhD. P means philosophy. PhD, Doctor of Philosophy. That was the only kind of degree that you could get in the beginning of the university system on the earth. And it all came from scripture in the beginning also. Of course, we're talking about Western, not the Vedic study and the Vedic knowledge, which came down eternally and then branched out into all branches of knowledge. It all comes from Vedas eventually, originally. But even in the system of education in general in the world, it first came from philosophy. Now, in the modern universities, the philosophy departments are very hard to maintain. Hardly anybody wants to go there. They don't get any money. They don't get the same facilities, because people can no longer be philosophical. It's all technology now, and the kids they're very fast. These kids, they're fast on the computer and the games and everything. When I went back to see my mother, to take care of her when she was going to leave her body, I hadn't looked at a television for 19 years. I mean, even casually, even walking by a store and looking, nothing, 19 years. I was so absorbed in distributing books and traveling here and there and doing all these things. So I went back, and there's only so much you can do to talk to your mother, especially in a situation like that. And she would, in the evening, she would sit down in front of the TV and she would watch these inane, Wheel of Fortune and kind of game shows and mindless stuff, But I was trying to bond with her, so I would sit with her and I would watch these things, But then, when the commercials came on, it went so fast from one frame to another, one shot, I couldn't follow. Literally. I mean, I'm not stupid. Maybe I am stupid. But I'm not stupid. But I literally couldn't follow what they were saying because it was moving so fast. And my mind was released from that bondage, from reading these books and serving Prabhupada and being with Prabhupada. It didn't make any sense at all to me what they were saying. And it was going so fast. And this is what's happening. The kids, the generations are being able to think faster and faster and faster, but more and more shallow, And they got no idea what the meaning of life is, what they have to do to be satisfied, how to solve the problems. Anyway, it's all in the Bhagavatam, When we get to the 12th canto, we read some of the 12th canto while I was here. And it gets even worse. So better get it together now in this life and go back to Godhead, because you don't want to be around when the Kali Yuga comes on full steam. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to stop now because I have to rest my voice for tomorrow morning. Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone out in cyberspace. We hope you had a good time. And we'll see you tomorrow night. And this is just a warning, not a warning, but public message, public announcement, I guess you could say. I'm going to Denver on Wednesday. I'll probably leave here at about 9:30 in the morning. I have a flight at 1 o'clock or something like that. And so, starting on Wednesday, I will be doing the reading an hour earlier, because in Denver we're in Mountain Time. So I'm going to keep doing the readings every day. And there's one day that I have a special program when I'm there, where I may have to do it even another time, but I'll announce it. I don't know what that time is, but I'll announce it while I'm there. Just in case you want to watch it, just in case. All right, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.